President Trump just put a clock on Iran. He's saying, we need a deal.
Well, it seems like that would be the best thing that could happen.
And if there's no deal, this will be very dramatic for Iran. And at the same time, Israel is pushing a hard line. A deal that ignores ballistic missiles and Iranian proxies is not a deal at all. It's just a delay. So here's the question right now. Are we heading into an agreement that actually reduces the threat? Or are we 1 minute away from an American decision to strike? And I'm telling you now, all of this for my house, between the day-to-day stuff that I need to do. And that's exactly the point. While we're living our regular lives, someone in Washington and someone in Tehran is moving a switch that can change the entire Middle East forever. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your ground report, where we cut through all the noise and stay with what is real. And here's what we're doing today, what we know, how we got here, and what it changes for Israel, but also for all of you. To understand this moment, you need one idea. A narrow deal is not the same thing as calm. A deal that treats only part of the problem and leaves the rest hanging can look like a win on paper for now, while the real threat keeps growing in the background. On one side, Trump wants a deal, and he's signaling that he won't drag this out. On the other side, Israel is saying, if it's only nuclear and nothing else, what about the ballistic missiles? And what about Iran's terror proxies? That's the tension. This is the gap, and that's where the decision lives. In the last day, Netanyahu was in Washington, in closed-door talks. His message was consistent. If there's going to be a deal, it has to include not only the nuclear file, but also Iran's ballistic missiles and the proxies across this region. And Trump, on camera, put it in the sharpest way possible. We need a deal fast, otherwise it becomes something else. One more thing matters in this area right now. This visit wasn't just a photo tour. It was a quiet, almost no noise, because if you're trying to influence the actual structure of an agreement, you don't do that in speeches. You do it in clauses, in closed doors. And from the outside, the United States is projecting a double message: diplomacy with muscles, talks with readiness. Now, I want to take you back and show you how we arrived at this 1 minute moment, because it didn't start today. It started when Iran made a strategic decision to build a ring of fire around Israel. We invite you to take part in something that is real, something rooted in the land and in our hearts. The Rebuild Israel campaign continues, bringing life back to Israel's north. Along Israel's northern borders, an area that is marked by war, displacement, and loss, we are planting an apple orchard, not as a symbol for a single moment, but as part of a long-term commitment to rebuild what was damaged. This orchard is more than just agriculture. It creates jobs for local families, it helps communities return and rebuild, and it sends a clear message to the people of Israel: you are not alone. When you donate, you're not just giving, you're rebuilding. Your support puts trees in the ground, it restores livelihoods, it transforms land that was scarred by war into a land that grows again. This is how renewal takes root. This is how Israel rebuilds after war. So join us in restoring the north of Israel and strengthening the future of the land. Go now to tbn.org/rebuildisrael or call 800-804-7895. Again, that's tbn.org/rebuildisrael or call 800-804-7895. Thank you so much for the support and for standing with Israel. So let's make this simple. Over the last 3 years, Iran's play was clear: bring the war to Israel without paying the full price directly. How do you do that? You do that with proxies. You do that with armed groups. You do that with pressure from multiple directions at the same time. So Israel gets stretched, gets exhausted, and is forced into making mistakes. And for a long stretch, it actually worked. It enforced Israel to carry out attacks against multiple fronts and to defend against infiltration by multiple terrorist organizations. Israel didn't face one front. it faced the feeling of many fronts at once, not one event, constant pressure. Threats in the north, threats in the south, threats from farther away, launches, attempts, disruption, non-stop. Then Iran moved to the next stage. It didn't only hide behind proxies. It started signaling, we are in this directly. We have our own long arm. And that's where ballistic missiles become the core issues. Because a ballistic missile isn't a theoretical threat. It's minutes. It's a tiny response window. And it's the kind of capability that punishes even a small mistake, every small mistake that you're making. And now, this is the shift. This is the part that most people are missing. While Iran tried to bring the war into Israel, Israel took the war back towards Iran, not with speeches, with actions. And the story of how we got to this decision point is not only nuclear, it's a chain of moves, one after the other, like dominoes. First, breaking Iran's proxy network. When you break a proxy, you don't just win a battle, you take Iran's hands off the table. You tell Tehran, you will not run a war through others while you stay protected at home. In the last war, that became clear. Israel systematically degraded the terror proxies that tried to hit us. It accumulated over time. Damage to infrastructure, damage to capabilities, damage to command systems, damage to weapons, pipelines, damage to the confidence. Second, the air power that makes depth possible. Air power is not a flex. It's what allows initiative. It lets you choose the time and the place. It forces the enemy to react to you. And there is a statistic that illustrates this from a different angle. Israel ranks extremely high when you talk about the fodder, the aircraft, related to the population. Hundreds of fodders for roughly 10 million people. That doesn't just sound impressive. It means availability, speed, and flexibility. Fast control in the regional scenarios. But here's the key. Air superiority is not the story, it's the tool. And that tool opened the third and biggest turning point, which is the blow inside Iran. Humiliation and strategy. Let me say this clearly. This is not about pride or ego. This is about the outcome. A regime that sells its people the image of strength, fear, and invulnerability breaks when reality contradicts this image. And in the 12-day war, Iran experienced something that it wasn't used to. It launched ballistic missiles, and it did not get the result that it wanted. We are still here, thank God. Different assessments circulated on exact interception percentages, but the bottom line is the same. Iran did not get the strategic image that it was chasing. What this did inside Iran. Now, listen to this, because this is where the story turns dark. After the blow, inside Iran, signs of civil resistance grew. People who felt that the regime dragged them into disaster. People crushed by fear and by the economy. People who realized the country was paying for the ideology of a small ruling circle. And then, according to the reports that continue to surface, the regime responded the way that dark regime respond. Fear, internal terror, arrests, shootings, repression. There's a major dispute over the exact numbers because it's extremely hard to measure inside a system that tries to black out information. But even the low-end verified picture is horrific. We're talking about thousands of people unalived, and higher-end assessments described in multiple reports talk about far larger scales, into the tens of thousands. And that matters because a regime willing to butcher its own people to survive is not a regime that you actually try to stabilize with a nice statement. While we're at the brink right now, so now we return to today, February 2026. Trump meets Netanyahu and says, I want to exhaust the talks and see if a deal is actually possible. And he also warns, fast otherwise becomes something else. If they don't agree to a deal now, the other option is already here on the table and at the seas with multiple naval carriers, and war machine. Netanyahu says that any deal must cover the ballistic missiles and the Iranian proxies, because those are the tools that Iran uses to rebuild a ring of fire around Israel. And this is the gap. Washington sometimes treats ballistic threats differently. Deterrence, layered defense, global posture. Israel treats it differently because here it's cities, minutes, families, lives, everything is close. And there's one more layer that makes this American not only Israeli. It matters for all of us. Iran is not playing alone. It's strengthening a wider axis, tightening ties with major powers like Russia and China, something that the United States does not accept as a strategic direction. So we are here. Diplomacy is running on a short runway. The United States is signaling readiness, and Israel is saying we're not going back to an era where Iran builds ballistic capabilities, funds proxies, and stays protected. Here's the bottom line. If a deal is narrow, only nuclear, and nothing about missiles and proxies, Israel may face a very hard decision because it leaves key engines of the threat alive. But if the path is a strike, nobody should pretend it's magic. It's not the end of the story. It can trigger responses, pressure, and escalation across the region. If this helps you see the picture clearly, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And share this with one person that you care about. In moments like this, truth has to move fast, and we need to unite in prayer. At the end of the day, this isn't a headline. This isn't just a story. It's a decision point. Iran tried to bring war into Israel through proxies and missiles and succeeded. And Israel flipped the equation, pushing back, reaching deeper, and shaking the regime's confidence. Now Washington is holding the steering wheel, and Jerusalem is fighting to ensure that if there is a deal, it's not a deal that hides the danger under the table. The coming weeks will show whether diplomacy becomes a framework that actually reduces the threat, or whether we're heading into a regional shock. And a short prayer, because you need to remember this is a spiritual war. There is no other way to describe the situation and the amount of hatred against Israel, against Jews, against Christians, against the West. This is a spiritual war. And we need to pray for wisdom to our leaders. Yes, all of our leaders that are involved in this situation. We need also to pray for our enemies to be used and for God to change their hearts. It's a possibility. God can make that happen. That's uniting prayer for the peace of Jerusalem, for all the allies, for everybody that is affected by this regime. So, really, keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.